Have you ever felt like you're the only one running in a relationship? Like no matter how much you reach out, how much you care, or how much you give, the other person never shows up? What if I told you that chasing someone who doesn't chase you isn't love, it's self-abandonment, and the moment you stop, your life changes forever? There's a quiet exhaustion that comes from always leaning forward, from waiting for replies, from replaying conversations, from wondering why you care more than they do if you're honest. You can feel it in your body, the tight chest, the restless mind, the way your worth starts shrinking every time you reach out and nothing reaches back. This isn't desperation. It's hope that has nowhere safe to land. And today, we're not here to shame that hope. We're here to give it a home inside you. Because the truth is, you don't chase people because you're weak. You chase because you're capable of deep attachment, deep loyalty, deep care. But when that care is poured into someone who isn't pouring back, it turns into self-abandonment. And that's where the real pain begins. At some point, we all have to face the quiet question we've been avoiding. Why am I trying so hard to be chosen by someone who isn't choosing me? The first truth is this: self-respect begins the moment you stop auditioning for love. Love that has to be chased is love that hasn't decided to stay. And no amount of effort, patience, or understanding can convince someone to value what they are not ready to hold. When you stop proving your worth, you don't lose connection, you regain dignity. You remember that your presence is not a favor someone grants you, it's a gift you offer. And gifts don't beg to be accepted. There's a quiet strength in detachment that often gets misunderstood. Detachment is not coldness. It's not punishment. It's emotional maturity. It's realizing that you can care deeply without clinging, that you can love without losing yourself. Detachment is saying, I see you clearly and I choose not to abandon myself to stay close to you. That choice doesn't harden you, it steadies you. Boundaries are often painted as walls, but they're not. They are doors with hinges. They open for respect and close for harm. When you stop chasing, you're not shutting people out. You're teaching them how to treat you. You're saying, I will meet you where there is mutual effort, but I will no longer chase you into places where I disappear. That isn't rejection. That's self-trust in action. There's also a deep peace waiting on the other side of emotional chaos. Chasing keeps your nervous system on edge, always alert, always hoping, always bracing. When you choose peace instead, life slows down. You stop reading between lines that were never meant for you. You stop fighting silence. You stop negotiating your needs down to nothing. Peace doesn't come from being wanted by everyone. It comes from no longer needing to be. And then there's the hardest part, letting go without bitterness. Not rewriting the story to make them a villain, not turning your tenderness into armor, just acknowledging the truth this connection asked you to give more than it gave back. You can grieve that without hating yourself for wanting it. You can walk away without dragging resentment behind you. Letting go this way is an act of grace for them, but especially for you. Eventually something shifts. You stop chasing because you realize you don't want to run anymore. You want to stand. You want relationships that walk toward you at the same pace. You want love that doesn't require you to shrink, wait, or prove. And the moment you stop chasing what doesn't chase you, you make space for what can actually meet you. So here's the invitation. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. The next time you feel the urge to reach, to explain, to overextend, pause, place that effort back into yourself. Stand where you are, breathe. You were never meant to chase love. You were meant to be rooted in your worth, whole, steady, and enough, and let what's meant for you recognize you there. There comes a moment when you realize how tired you are, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that lives in your chest. The tiredness of always reaching first, of explaining yourself again, of waiting for signs, replies, reassurance. You start to notice how much of your energy is spent trying to be seen by someone who keeps looking past you. And in that moment, a quiet truth surfaces. This isn't love anymore. This is you running after something that keeps moving away. Chasing doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are hopeful. It means you know how to attach, how to care, how to invest emotionally. But when hope is poured into a place where it isn't met, it slowly turns into self-erasure. You begin adjusting your tone, your needs, your expectations, until one day you don't recognize yourself. The real cost of chasing isn't rejection. It's the slow loss of self, respect that happens when you keep offering more to someone who keeps offering less. At some point, You have to stop asking why they don't choose you and start asking why you are choosing this. Worth was never meant to be proven through effort. You do not earn value by being patient enough, understanding enough, quiet enough. The moment you feel like you have to audition for care, something essential has already gone missing. Love that fits does not require constant convincing. It doesn't ask you to perform exhaustion as devotion. There is a kind of strength that looks like stepping back instead of leaning in. Detachment is often misunderstood as coldness, but in truth, it is clarity. It is the ability to say, I can care without clinging. Detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop sacrificing yourself to keep a connection alive. You stop tying your sense of safety to someone else's availability. You allow people to show you who they are without trying to manage, fix, or chase them into being different. Boundaries are born the moment you decide your inner life matters. They are not punishments or ultimatums. They are quiet agreements you make with yourself about what you will and will not accept. When you stop chasing, you are not withdrawing love. You are redirecting it back to where it belongs. You are saying, I will no longer chase someone at the cost of my peace. That choice doesn't make you difficult. It makes you honest. There is relief in no longer living in emotional chaos. Chasing keeps your nervous system on high alert, constantly scanning for signs, meanings, and shifts in tone. Your mind becomes a courtroom where you defend your worth over and over again. When you choose peace, that noise begins to settle. You stop reading into silence. You stop arguing with reality. You accept what is being offered instead of fantasizing about what could be. Peace arrives not when things work out perfectly, but when you stop fighting what isn't working. Letting go without bitterness is one of the bravest things you can do. It means you allow disappointment without turning it into armor. You don't rewrite the story to make yourself unlovable or them a villain. You simply tell the truth. This connection asked you to give more than you could afford. And that truth is enough to walk away. You don't need revenge, closure speeches, or final explanations. Sometimes closure is choosing yourself quietly and consistently. Over time, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling the urge to chase because you no longer want to abandon yourself to be close to someone else. You begin to recognize the difference between chemistry and safety, between intensity and reciprocity. You start valuing the calm of being met over the adrenaline of being unsure. And that changes the kind of relationships you allow into your life. Standing still in your worth may feel unfamiliar at first. It may feel like doing nothing when you're used to doing everything. But standing is not passive. It is grounded. It is trusting that what is meant for you will not require you to disappear. When you stop chasing, you make room for connection that doesn't drain you, for love that walks toward you instead of away. So the next time you feel yourself reaching for someone who isn't reaching back, pause. Place your hand on your own chest. Feel your breath. Choose yourself in that moment, not angrily, not dramatically, just firmly and kindly. Stop chasing, stand where you are rooted, whole. Already enough. There is another truth that often reveals itself only after you've stopped chasing, and it can feel uncomfortable at first. When you no longer run after people, you begin to notice how much of your identity was wrapped around being needed, being wanted, being chosen. Chasing can quietly become a way to feel relevant. It gives you a role, a mission, a sense of purpose, and when that disappears, there can be a hollow space where urgency used to live. That space is not emptiness, it is room to meet yourself without distraction. When you stop chasing, you begin to see relationships more clearly. You notice who reaches out without being prompted. You notice who shows up without being reminded. You notice how different it feels when effort is mutual rather than extracted. This clarity can sting because it removes the illusion that effort alone can create closeness. But clarity is a kindness. It frees you from guessing. It frees you from waiting. It frees you from confusing inconsistency with depth. There is grief here, and it deserves to be honored. You are not just letting go of a person. You are letting go of the version of yourself who believed that if you just tried harder, things would change. That version of you was not foolish. They were hopeful, they were loyal, they were doing the best they could with the understanding they had at the time. Growth does not require you to shame that past self. Growth asks you to thank them and then gently step forward without them. As you stop chasing, you may notice resistance from others. Some people are comfortable when you overextend, When you accommodate, when you carry more than your share, your stillness may confuse them. Your silence may unsettle them. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means the dynamic is changing. When you no longer chase, you are no longer available for imbalance. And imbalance always resists correction before it releases its grip. This is where inner strength begins to feel less like intensity and more like steadiness. You stop reacting to every emotional pull. You stop explaining your boundaries in the hope they will be approved. You realize that boundaries are not negotiations, they are acknowledgments. You acknowledge your limits. You acknowledge your needs. You acknowledge that your time and emotional energy are finite and valuable, and you begin to treat them that way. There is also a deep reclamation of dignity that happens when you stop chasing. Dignity is quiet. It does not announce itself. It lives in the way you no longer beg for clarity, the way you accept answers without demanding different ones, the way you walk away when something costs you your self-respect. Dignity is choosing not to convince someone to see your value. It is trusting that the right connections will recognize it without persuasion. As you stand in this place, your relationships begin to change. You become less impressed by grand gestures and more moved by consistency, less drawn to intensity and more drawn to safety. You begin to understand that love does not need to be chased because it does not run. It stays, it meets you, it responds. This understanding reshapes your expectations not in a hardened way, but in a grounded one. There is peace in knowing you no longer need to earn your place in someone's life. Peace in knowing that your worth is not determined by how much effort you expend. Peace in realizing that being wanted should not feel like a competition you're constantly losing. This peace is not loud or dramatic. It settles into your body slowly, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. And from this place, you begin to choose differently. Not because you are afraid of being hurt again, but because you trust yourself to walk away when something feels wrong. You trust yourself to stay when something feels safe. You trust yourself to stand still without chasing, without forcing, without shrinking. That trust becomes the foundation of everything that comes next. So if you feel the urge to chase again, pause and listen to what's underneath it. Often it is not love. It is fear, fear of being forgotten, fear of being alone. Meet that fear with compassion, not action. Remind yourself that you do not have to run to be worthy. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be chosen. You are allowed to stand in your life without chasing anyone to stay. There is a deeper layer that reveals itself when you've practiced standing still for a while, and it has to do with trust. Trusting what people show you, not what you hope they will become. Chasing often grows from potential, from imagining who someone could be if they just tried harder, healed faster, or realized your value. But potential is not a relationship. It is a story we tell ourselves to survive inconsistency. And the longer you chase potential, the longer you postpone reality. When you stop chasing, you begin to accept information instead of arguing with it. Delayed replies, mixed signals, emotional distance, these are not puzzles to solve. They are answers. Accepting them does not make you cynical. It makes you honest. Honesty is not harsh. It is grounding. It brings your attention back to what is actually happening instead of what you wish were happening. This is where self-trust starts to replace self-doubt. Chasing trains you to question your instincts. You wonder if you're asking for too much, feeling too deeply, needing too often. Standing still teaches you the opposite lesson. It reminds you that your needs are signals, not flaws, that discomfort is data, that confusion is not chemistry, it is misalignment, and you are allowed to respond to misalignment by stepping back. There is courage in allowing people to be disappointed in you. When you stop chasing, you may stop accommodating, explaining, or softening your truth. Some people will feel that shift and label it distance or change. Let them. You are not responsible for managing someone else's emotional comfort at the expense of your own well-being. Choosing yourself will sometimes disappoint others. That does not mean you are wrong. It means you are no longer betraying yourself to keep the peace. As this courage grows, you begin to feel less reactive. You don't rush to fix what isn't yours to fix. You don't chase clarity from people who avoid it. You don't demand reassurance from those who withhold it. Instead, you observe, you listen, you decide this is emotional adulthood, responding rather than pursuing, choosing rather than chasing. Something else softens too, the need to be seen by everyone. When you stop chasing, you stop trying to be understood by people who are not willing to listen. You stop over-explaining your heart. You learn that being deeply known by a few safe people is worth more than being vaguely wanted by many. This shift brings intimacy with yourself first, and from that place, healthier connections naturally follow. You may notice a quiet grief here as well, the grief of recognizing how much energy you poured into people who were never able to meet you. Let that grief exist. It is not a sign you failed, it is a sign you cared. Grief does not mean go back. It means go forward with more discernment and less self-blame. Over time, you begin to feel rooted. You are no longer swayed by inconsistency or pulled off center by someone else's uncertainty. You know what alignment feels like in your body. You know what safety feels like. And because you know it, you are less willing to settle for anything that keeps you anxious, small, or unsure. Standing in this place does not make you closed off. It makes you clear about what you want, clear about what you deserve, clear about what you will no longer chase. And clarity is a powerful form of kindness to yourself and to everyone who enters your life. So when the temptation to chase arises again, remember this: you do not need to convince anyone to meet you. The people who are meant to be in your life will not require pursuit. They will recognize your presence, respond to your effort, and meet you where you are without you having to run after them to stay. There comes a moment when standing still begins to feel like strength instead of fear. And that is when you realize how much peace you were trading for proximity. Chasing often disguises itself as connection, but what it really feeds on is anxiety. The anxiety of not knowing where you stand, the anxiety of waiting for proof that you matter. When you stop chasing, you choose a different relationship with your own nervous system. You choose steadiness over suspense, clarity over chaos. You begin to notice how calm feels in your body. Not the kind of calm that comes from things finally working out, but the calm that comes from no longer fighting reality. You stop bracing for impact. You stop monitoring tone, timing, and distance. That calm is not boring, it is regulating. It allows you to think clearly, to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to respond instead of react. Peace becomes something you protect, not something you postpone. Choosing peace sometimes means choosing distance, not out of punishment or pride, but out of self-preservation. Distance creates perspective. It allows emotions to settle and truth to surface. When you are no longer entangled in chasing, you can see patterns instead of moments. You can recognize whether effort flows both ways or whether you have been carrying the weight alone. Distance doesn't mean you care less. It means you care wisely. There is also a powerful release that comes from no longer personalizing someone else's limitations. When you stop chasing, you stop asking what is wrong with you and start recognizing what simply isn't aligned. Not everyone who fails to meet you is rejecting you. Some people are unavailable, unready, or unable. Their inability is not a verdict on your worth. It is information about their capacity, and information allows you to choose differently. As you release the habit of chasing, you begin to feel less defensive and more discerning. You no longer argue with red flags or explain them away. You trust what feels off. You trust what feels safe. This trust in yourself is quiet but transformative. It replaces the need for constant reassurance with a steady sense of inner authority. You become your own anchor. There is freedom in no longer needing immediate answers. You learn to sit with uncertainty without trying to chase it into resolution. You understand that clarity cannot be forced from someone who avoids it. And instead of waiting in limbo, you move forward with your life. You invest in what nourishes you. You show up where you are welcomed. You stop pausing your life for people who keep you on hold. Letting go in this way does not make you detached from love. It makes you available for healthier love. Love that does not require you to overextend. Love that does not confuse intensity with intimacy. Love that does not make you feel small or replaceable. When you stop chasing, you create space for relationships that are reciprocal, steady, and kind. You may still feel moments of longing. That is human. Strength does not mean you stop wanting connection. It means you stop abandoning yourself to get it. You learn that longing can be felt without being acted upon. You can miss someone without returning to a dynamic that diminished you. This is emotional strength rooted in self-respect. And gradually, standing still becomes natural. You stop scanning for who might leave. You stop chasing people to stay. You begin to trust that what is meant for you will not require you to sacrifice your peace. That trust becomes the ground you stand on, and from that ground you move through the world differently, calmer, clearer, and deeply anchored in your own worth. Eventually, the final shift happens quietly, almost without announcement. You realize that not chasing has changed the way you see yourself. You no longer measure your value by how much effort you give or how deeply you are willing to bend. You start to feel a steady sense of enoughness that isn't dependent on being wanted in the moment. This is not arrogance. It is belonging to yourself. You begin to understand that love is not something you secure through persistence. It is something that unfolds where there is mutual willingness. Chasing once made you feel alive because it kept you focused outward, always responding, always adjusting. Standing still turns your attention inward. You start asking different questions. Not, how do I make them stay, but how do I stay true to myself? Those questions change everything. There is a deep relief in no longer needing to be chosen to feel whole. You stop tying your sense of identity to someone else's attention. You stop confusing attachment with survival. You realize that being alone for a season is far less painful than being constantly unsettled in someone else's uncertainty. Solitude becomes a place of repair rather than punishment. In that space, you reconnect with your intuition, your values, your rhythm. As this rootedness grows, you become less reactive to inconsistency. You don't feel the urge to confront every shift or chase every emotional withdrawal. You understand that consistency is not something you demand, it is something you select for. And if it isn't present, you do not try to manufacture it through effort. You simply take note and choose accordingly. You also discover that letting go without bitterness protects your softness. Resentment hardens you in ways you may not notice at first. It closes your heart under the disguise of strength. When you release without hostility, you keep your capacity to love intact. You allow disappointment to pass through you instead of setting up camp inside you. This is not weakness. This is emotional wisdom. There is humility in accepting that some connections are meant to teach, not stay. Not every bond is meant to last forever. Some are meant to show you where you overgave, where you ignored your needs, where you confused longing with love. When you stop chasing, you honor the lesson without clinging to the experience. You take the growth and leave the pain behind. Standing in this place, you no longer rush toward anyone who shows interest. You take your time. You observe how it feels in your body. You notice whether you feel calm or anxious, steady or uncertain. You trust those sensations. Your body becomes a guide, not an obstacle, and you listen to it with respect. This is where true confidence lives, not in being desired by everyone, but in knowing you will not abandon yourself to keep someone else. Confidence here is quiet. It does not need to announce boundaries or explain choices. It simply moves in alignment. It walks away when something feels wrong. It stays when something feels safe. And from this place, connection becomes cleaner. You meet people without desperation or defense. You offer your presence without overextension. You allow relationships to develop at a pace that honors both people. There is no chasing because there is no running. There is only meeting. So when you feel the old impulse rise, the urge to reach, to fix, to prove, pause and remember who you are now. You are someone who stands instead of chases. Someone who chooses peace over confusion. Someone who knows that love does not need to be hunted down. It arrives where you are rooted, present, and whole. There is one more truth that settles in after everything else, and it changes how you move through the world. When you stop chasing, you stop confusing urgency with importance. You realize that not everything that pulls at you deserves a response. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every emotional wave needs to be chased to shore. This realization brings a quiet authority into your life, the authority to choose where your energy goes. You begin to notice how often chasing was driven by fear rather than desire. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced, fear that if you didn't try harder, you would lose your place. Standing still teaches you that what is truly meant for you cannot be lost by a pause. If something requires constant pursuit to remain, it was never stable to begin with. This understanding loosens fear's grip on your decisions. With this comes patience. Not the kind that waits in hope, but the kind that waits in trust. You stop rushing intimacy. You stop attaching meaning to early intensity. You allow time to reveal truth. Time shows you who is consistent, who follows through, who respects your presence. You no longer chase potential because you have learned that reality is kinder than fantasy. Reality may disappoint you, but it will not deceive you. You also stop taking responsibility for emotional labor that was never yours. You are no longer the one holding conversations together, fixing misunderstandings alone, or carrying the emotional weight of two people. When effort becomes one-sided, you feel it quickly now. And instead of pushing through that discomfort, you honor it. You step back. You allow the imbalance to reveal itself without rushing to correct it. This creates a profound sense of emotional freedom, freedom from overthinking, freedom from rehearsing conversations, freedom from waiting by the door of someone else's availability. Your life begins to feel fuller, not because more people enter it, but because you are fully present in it. You invest your energy in friendships, passions, rest, and growth. You stop orbiting someone else's attention and begin to inhabit your own life again. There is also a new kind of courage that emerges, the courage to be misunderstood. When you stop chasing, some people may interpret your stillness as distance or indifference. Let them. You no longer contort yourself to manage how others perceive you. You trust that those who are meant to understand you will not require constant explanation. This courage brings a lightness to your relationships. You are no longer performing closeness. You are allowing it. As you live this way, you begin to attract different dynamics. People who are comfortable with mutual effort. People who do not disappear when things deepen. People who do not make you question your place in their life. This isn't luck, it's alignment. When you stop chasing, you stop broadcasting availability for imbalance. You become available only for what meets you with respect. There may still be moments when old patterns whisper to you. Moments when loneliness nudges you toward familiar discomfort. In those moments, remember that familiarity is not the same as safety. You have already outgrown the need to be chosen at any cost. You have already learned what it feels like to stand in your worth. Return to that feeling. Let it guide you. Over time, you stop seeing standing still as restraint. You see it as discernment. You are no longer withholding love. You are offering it intentionally. You understand that love given freely is only meaningful when it is also received willingly. This understanding protects your heart without closing it, and this is where everything comes together. You stop chasing because you trust yourself. You trust yourself to survive disappointment. You trust yourself to walk away. You trust yourself to wait without waiting for someone else to decide your value. That trust becomes the foundation of your strength. You are no longer someone who runs after connection. You are someone who stands in clarity, peace, and self-respect. And from that place, whatever comes toward you is not something you had to chase. It is something that chose you back. What settles in after all of this is a deep, embodied knowing that you are no longer available for half connection. You feel it before you can explain it. Your body responds differently now. Where you once leaned forward, you pause. Where you once rushed to respond, you take a breath. Where you once chased reassurance, you offer yourself steadiness instead. This is not restraint born from fear. It is discernment born from self-respect. You begin to recognize how much chasing required you to betray your own signals. The tightness in your chest, the restlessness in your thoughts, the way your intuition whispered, something is off, while your hope shouted louder. Standing still allows those signals to become trustworthy again. You stop overriding yourself. You stop negotiating with discomfort. You listen, and listening changes you. There is a quiet confidence that grows when you no longer need immediate validation. You are not waiting to be chosen to feel valuable. You are not scanning interactions for proof that you matter. You matter because you exist, because you feel deeply, because you show up with sincerity. This confidence does not need applause. It doesn't demand reassurance. It simply stands steady and grounded, even in uncertainty. You also begin to notice how much space opens up in your life, space where anxiety used to live, space where rumination once looped endlessly. In that space, creativity returns. Joy becomes more accessible, you laugh more freely, you rest more honestly. You realize that chasing kept you busy but not fulfilled. Standing still gives you your life back. This shift changes how you love. You no longer pour from depletion. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You offer your heart without chasing someone to hold it. And because of that, your love becomes cleaner, safer, and more sustainable. You are not trying to secure closeness. You are allowing it to form naturally or not at all. There is also a softness that remains intact when you stop chasing the wrong people. You don't harden. You don't close off. You simply become selective. You protect your tenderness without burying it. You understand that your softness is not the problem. It is your strength. It only needs to be shared where it is respected. Over time, you stop seeing standing still as a loss. You see it as an arrival into your own life, your own rhythm, your own worth. You realize that you were never meant to run after love. You were meant to live in a way that love could find you without effort, without pursuit, without self-betrayal. And when connection does come, real connection, it feels different. It does not activate fear. It does not demand performance. It does not require chasing. It meets you where you are, calm and mutual. You recognize it not by intensity, but by peace. This is the final transformation. You stop chasing not because you've given up on love, but because you finally believe you deserve to be met. You believe that what is meant for you will not require you to disappear. You believe that standing in your truth is enough, so you remain where you are, rooted, present, and whole, not waiting, not chasing, simply living. And from that place, whatever walks toward you is not something you had to earn. It is something that belongs with you. So today, I invite you to stop running after people who don't run toward you. Place your energy where it is welcomed. Stand where your worth is recognized without explanation. Breathe deeply. Feel your presence and trust yourself enough to let go without fear. The moment you stop chasing, you begin standing rooted whole and enough exactly as you are. So take one step right now, one small act of choosing yourself. One boundary, one pause, one refusal to overextend. Let that be your declaration. You will no longer chase what drains you. You will stand for what nurtures you. Your peace, your dignity, your worth are not negotiable. Stand in them and watch how life begins to meet you where you already are.